What would you do if the one person you vowed to love for life was secretly planning your death? My wife hired someone to eliminate me, and to catch her, I had to do the unthinkable. I had to fake my own death. Imagine watching a secret video. You see your wife looking at a photograph that proves you are gone, and she doesn't cry. She smiles. This is not a movie. This is my true story. A story of love, ultimate betrayal, and the insane, elaborate trap I had to set to expose her plot before it was too late. You will not believe the lengths she went to, or what we had to do to stop her. If you are ready for a story that will have you on the edge of your seat, one that you will never forget, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now. Because we are diving into this unbelievable story immediately. My name is Ramon Sosa, and I believed my life was a settled thing. I had built a sanctuary, not of quiet, but of effort. The gymnasium was my passion, a place where the rhythmic skip of a rope and the steady impact of gloves against a heavy bag created a kind of music. It was a life I understood, one I had constructed with my own hands, built on discipline and sweat. I was, I thought, a man who knew his own mind and his own world. I was content, perhaps too comfortable, and I had no idea that I was standing on the precise edge of an abyss. I thought I needed nothing more than what I had. I was, of course, a fool. She arrived in the year 2007. She did not just walk into my line of sight. She made an entrance, a disruption in the ordinary rhythm of my evening. I was out with friends, the sound of music, a familiar backdrop when Lulu passed by. She was not just beautiful, she was a force, a presence that seemed to pull the energy of the space toward her. She carried herself with a confidence that was almost a challenge, and she wore a scent that announced her before she even spoke. It was gardenias, a sweet, heavy fragrance that was almost overwhelming. It clung to the air, and I found myself turning to follow it. To see her again. I asked her to dance. She accepted with a smile that was both brilliant and, I see now, practiced. She moved with a fluid, mesmerizing grace. I was trying, and failing, to keep up, my attention fixed entirely on her, on the way she looked at me. I was so captivated that I failed to see her misstep. She was wearing these impossibly high heels, perhaps 3 or 4 inches tall. Her foot came down, sharp and sudden, directly onto my own. The pain was immediate, a bright, shocking flash that shot up my entire leg. I am sure I winced, but she only laughed, a bright, apologetic sound. She steadied herself by grabbing my arm, her touch electric. Even in that moment of sharp, radiating pain, my only coherent thought was that she had found a way to get my complete attention. It was clumsy, yes, but I found it utterly charming. It was, I told myself, a human flaw that made her seem more real, more approachable. We talked after that. Her story emerged, not all at once, but in careful, curated pieces. She was a mother, she said, of 2 children. She was divorced. She spoke of a previous relationship, one that had been filled with shadows, one she described as abusive. She had come here, to this country, she explained, seeking a safer, better life for herself and her family. Her story of vulnerability was the perfect counterpoint to her vibrant, strong presence. It triggered something deep inside me, a powerful, almost primal instinct to protect. Here was this captivating woman who had, by her own account, endured so much. I felt that I could be her safe harbor. I wanted to be the one to provide the better life she was searching for. The many warnings, the red flags, were waving furiously all around me, but her allure had made me colorblind. Our romance was a whirlwind, an intoxicating rush that moved faster than I thought possible, propelled by that first intense connection. We had a small wedding, attended by just a few friends and her family. I was entirely lost in the moment, certain of my decision. I remember her mother approaching me just after the ceremony. She was a small woman, with dark eyes that seemed to see far too much. She leaned in close, as if to share a heartfelt blessing or a piece of motherly advice. Instead, she whispered, her voice so low I could barely hear it. "Now she is your trouble." She then turned and walked away before I could form a response, leaving me standing there, the echo of her words cold against my skin. What a strange, unsettling thing to say. I shook my head, forcing a smile, dismissing it. It must be a cultural misunderstanding, I reasoned, a bitter joke from someone who perhaps did not approve of the hasty marriage. I looked across the room at Lulu, my new wife. She was smiling, that same radiant, captivating smile that had drawn me in from the very first moment. I dismissed the warning. I told myself it was nothing. It was, as I would learn much too late, absolutely everything. The strange, cold words of her mother dissolved in the days that followed. They were a momentary chill, easily forgotten in the fever of our new life. To be with Lulu was to be in a constant state of revitalization. She was a vibrant, consuming energy, and I found myself completely swept up in her current. The world seemed to have shifted on its axis, becoming brighter, more intense, every part of it revolving around her. My life before her felt like a dull, gray prologue to a story that was only now truly beginning. Our connection was all-consuming. It was an intimacy so profound that it felt less like a new relationship and more like a long-delayed reunion. I was captivated, utterly and completely. I felt a new energy in myself, a vigor I had not possessed in years. My focus sharpened, my drive returned, and I gave her all the credit. She was my muse, my renewed purpose. We were inseparable, our lives merging with a speed that felt both natural and dizzying. She wanted to know everything about me, about my life, about my work. I gave her that access, freely and without reservation. She began to spend her days at the gym. At first, she was simply a presence, a bright smile for the members, a supportive partner for me. But she was a quick study. Her charm was magnetic, and she effortlessly won over my longtime clients and my staff. Where I was focused on the training, the physical work, she was focused on the people. She remembered their names, their stories. They adored her. She was the perfect complement to my gruff focus, the soft, welcoming face of the business. I saw us as a team, an unbeatable partnership. My world, which had once been mine alone, was now ours. But there were moments, fleeting and easy to dismiss, that gave me pause. They were almost imperceptible, tiny cracks in the perfect facade. We would be in the midst of a shared laugh, or a moment of intense, quiet connection, and her eyes would change. It was a look I could not decipher, a sudden, cold detachment that would settle over her features for just a second. The warmth would vanish, replaced by something assessing, almost analytical, as if she were looking not at me, but through me, calculating something I could not understand. It was a momentary void, and then, just as quickly as it appeared, it would be gone. She would blink, or her brilliant smile would return, and the warmth would flood back in, so completely that I instantly convinced myself I had imagined the shift. I must have been mistaken. It was a trick of the light, or a shadow of my own insecurity. How could I dare to harbor such a disloyal thought? This woman, who had given me this new, vibrant life, who had trusted me with her own vulnerable past, deserved better than my suspicion. I would pull her closer, as if to physically erase the doubt, and she would respond with the very passion that had so completely captivated me. I dismissed the coldness. I buried the doubt. I chose again and again to see only the woman I wanted her to be. It seemed the most natural progression in the world. Our lives were one, and our work should be as well. We formalized the partnership. Lulu, my wife, my partner in all things, officially took the reins of the business side of the gymnasium. I was relieved. It was the part of the work I had always endured rather than enjoyed. I loved the training, the coaching, the connection with the fighters. The spreadsheets and the invoices were my anchor. She, I believed, would be my wings. And she was. Her skill was not just surprising, it was stunning. She had a mind for numbers and a strategic focus that I had never suspected. Within months, she had restructured our memberships, renegotiated with suppliers, and streamlined every aspect of our finances. She was brilliant. The gym, which had always been my stable passion, began to transform into a truly profitable enterprise. We were doing better than I had ever dreamed possible. Our financial situation improved dramatically, and I saw us as a true power couple, a perfect fusion of heart and mind. I had brought the soul, but she had brought the ambition. I was more than happy, I was proud. I trusted her. I trusted her completely. The changes began so subtly that I did not even register them as changes. They were, at first, just conversations. She would come to me, her brow furrowed with a manufactured concern, her voice low and intimate. She was worried about Marcos, my oldest friend, who had helped me manage the front desk for years. "Darling," she would say, her hand resting on my arm, "I know you trust him, but he has been so careless lately." The new membership figures were not entered, and he seemed very defensive when I asked him about it. "I am only thinking of you, of protecting what we have built." I listened, and because I trusted her, I began to watch Marcos. And in watching, I began to see what she had pointed out. I saw the small mistakes, the moments of distraction I had previously dismissed as human. They now looked like liabilities. The easygoing friendship that had defined our work became strained, my newfound scrutiny creating a rift that had never existed. It ended as she knew it would. Marcos left, feeling betrayed, and I felt a deep, uncomfortable pang of guilt. Lulu was there to soothe it. "You did the right thing, my love," she whispered. "It is hard, but you have to be strong for us." She was my defender, my champion. And one by one, she defended me from everyone I had ever relied on. An old supplier was suddenly disrespectful to her. A longtime client was disruptive. She was building a wall around us, piece by piece, and I was handing her the bricks. She framed it not as isolation, but as refinement. We were creating a perfect, protected world just for the two of us. My world became smaller, its focus narrowing until she was the only other person in it. Then came the milestone we had been working toward for years. After a long and difficult process, Lulu became an American citizen. We celebrated, of course. I was genuinely, profoundly happy for her. I felt I had truly given her the new, safe life she had wanted, the one she deserved. This, I thought, was the final piece of our shared dream. But it marked a shift. It was not immediate. It was not a thunderclap. It was a subtle, almost imperceptible cooling. The intoxicating passion that had defined us did not vanish, but it began to feel rationed. The woman who had needed my protection and validation now held a new, unassailable security. Her suggestions at the gym, once offered with a respectful deference, now carried the weight of expectation. That brief, cold detachment I had seen in her eyes, the look I had always dismissed, it lingered now. Just a beat longer. Just enough for me to feel it. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself it was the natural settling of a marriage. But deep down, for the very first time, I felt something new. I felt the first tremor of unease, the strange, chilling sensation of being suddenly and completely off balance. The security of her citizenship, the final, solid piece of her new life, was the pivot point. I had celebrated it as our victory, but I see now it was hers alone. The shift was not sudden, it was a slow, insidious withdrawal. The passion that had been the very air I breathed, the intoxicating energy that had redefined my world, was now offered conditionally, a reward for my agreement, my compliance. It became a tool. When I conceded to her opinions on the gym's management, when I agreed to distance myself from yet another old acquaintance, the warmth would return, a calculated echo of the woman I had married. She would touch my arm, her smile would reach her eyes, and for a few hours, I could almost deceive myself. But the disagreements, once unthinkable, began to mount. They were never loud, never frantic. Lulu did not engage in shouting matches. Her method was far more effective. She employed a cold, quiet disappointment, a withdrawal of her presence that left the space we shared feeling vast and empty. Our arguments were always, in one way or another, about control. Money was the first true battleground. I had given her the keys to the kingdom, and she had no intention of ever sharing the throne. I once questioned a large expenditure, a renovation to the gym's lounge that seemed far more extravagant than necessary. I had approached it gently, as a partner. "I was just wondering about the cost, Lulu," I had said. "It seems quite high." She did not look up from the ledger she was studying. "It is an investment," she said, her voice flat. "It is what the business requires to attract the right clientele. But I thought we might discuss it first," I pressed, feeling a prickle of defensiveness. "It is still my gym, too." Her head lifted slowly. The warmth was gone. Her eyes were not angry, they were opaque, assessing. "I am doing what is best for our finances, Ramon. I thought you trusted me to manage these things. Or have you suddenly decided that my judgment is flawed?" The accusation hung in the air. "You do not trust me." It was her favorite weapon. To challenge her was to be disloyal. I retreated, as I always did, the guilt and confusion warring within me. The renovation went ahead. The true, final wedge, however, was my family. She had never been warm to them, but she had, in the beginning, been polite. Now, she saw them as a threat to her absolute authority in my life. I mentioned that my brother was in a difficult spot, that I was thinking of helping him, lending him some money. Lulu's response was immediate and sharp. Absolutely not. He is my brother, Lulu, I argued, stung by her instant refusal. He needs help. He is a grown man who makes poor decisions, she replied, her words clipped. Every dollar you give to him is a dollar you take from us. From this family. From what I have built, what you have built. I was stunned. This was my life long before you. She stood then, her composure perfect, her expression unreadable. And look how much better it is now. I will not allow you to jeopardize our security for your sentimental feelings. They do not like me, Ramon. They never have. And now you ask me to pay for them. You cannot be so weak. That night, for the first time, I reached for her and she turned away. It was not a rejection born of anger, it was a simple, non-negotiable statement of fact. Her affection was rescinded. The message was clear. My loyalty was divided. And so, I would have nothing. The coldness persisted. Days turned into a week. I was living with a stranger, a polite, efficient, and utterly remote partner who ran my business and shared my house. The silence was deafening. I was the one who broke. I apologized. I conceded. I promised to be more sensible about my family. The warmth returned, but it felt different. It felt thin, brittle. It felt like a performance. I began to see my life clearly. I was no longer a partner. I was an asset. I was the name on the door, the public face she needed, but my input was no longer required. I was a stranger in my own home, an employee in my own gym. I looked at this woman, this beautiful, captivating woman I had loved, with an all-consuming fire, and I felt nothing but a deep, chilling emptiness. I realized, with a quiet, devastating certainty, that the woman I had married was gone, or perhaps had never existed at all. The marriage was not just failing, it was a fiction. I knew, instinctively, that I could not confront her with this. The woman who ran my life with such cold precision would not simply let me walk away. The battle would be brutal. The marriage was over. I had to get out. I made the decision alone, in the silence of my own mind, and I knew, even then, that I had to be careful. I had no idea how careful I would need to be. The narrative now shifts, moving away from my own troubled mind to land on a young man I would have trusted with my life. His name was Mundo. He was one of ours, a kid from the gym who had grown into a fine young man under the scent of canvas and leather. He was all heart, a hard worker, and he looked up to me with a loyalty I had perhaps taken for granted. He called me Pops, a name that had started as a gym joke years ago but had settled into something real, something approaching family. I did not know it, but he was about to become the single most important person in my life. He was at the gym late one evening. Not unusual. He would often stay after his own training, helping to wipe down the equipment or just talking with the last few members. The main lights were off, and the vast space was filled with shadows, the only illumination coming from the small office near the front, the one that had once been mine and was now, in every practical sense, hers. Mundo was walking toward the exit, his gym bag slung over his shoulder, when he heard the voices. He paid them no mind at first. It was just Lulu, my wife, inside her office. But the tone of her voice made him pause. It was not the bright, charming sound that she used for the members, nor the cool, dismissive one she had begun to use with me. This was different. This was a low, flat, cold frequency he had never heard from her before. He slowed, his footsteps hushing. He was not an eavesdropper by nature, but something in that tone held him fast. He heard another voice and recognized it as her daughter's. They were speaking in a mix of languages, their words rapid and sharp. He was not trying to listen, not really, until a few clear words sliced through the quiet. "A young man in the gym," he heard Lulu say. Mundo frowned, wondering if she was talking about him or one of the other fighters. Then, the conversation took a turn that made the blood in his veins slow to a crawl. He heard Lulu mention people in Mexico. He heard her use a phrase, a casual, terrifying phrase, about people who chops up people for money. Mundo froze. His entire body went rigid. This had to be a joke, a story, something she had seen in a movie. It could not be real. He told himself to keep walking, to get out, that he had misheard. But he was rooted to the spot, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He heard her daughter say something, her voice a low question. And then he heard Lulu's response. It was not a word. It was a sound. A low, contemplative, It was a sound of consideration, of problem solving. And then she spoke, her voice still holding that flat, chilling cold. Maybe we can use him. Mundo felt a wave of nausea. He instinctively pressed himself back against the wall, deeper into the shadows, his mind screaming at him to run. He risked a glance, a tiny fractional look around the edge of the doorframe. The office light was bright, and he could see her silhouette, her back mostly to him. He saw her make a gesture. She raised her hand, her fingers straight, and drew it quickly and sharply across her own throat. It was not a joke. It was a punctuation. It was a business decision. And then the final horrifying piece fell into place. He heard her daughter mention my name. The conversation was not about some abstract problem. It was not a story. They were talking about me. The problem she was so calmly discussing, the one she was considering using people in Mexico to solve, was me, the man she shared a home with. Her husband. Mundo backed away, his movements jerky, robotic. He felt as if he were moving through water, his legs heavy and unresponsive. He did not breathe until he was outside, the night air hitting his face, but it brought no relief. He was shaking, a deep, uncontrollable tremor. He tried to rationalize it. He tried to tell himself he had misunderstood, that he had connected pieces that did not belong together. But he could not. He could not erase the sound of her voice. He could not unsee that cold, final gesture. It was real. He knew, with a sickening, absolute certainty, that the woman I had married was planning to have me killed. Mundo did not sleep. The night was an agonizing, endless stretch of time, filled with the echo of her voice and the sharp finality of that gesture. He saw it every time he closed his eyes. He saw her cold, considering look. He heard the words, "People in Mexico, chops up people." And he heard my name. The man he respected, the man he called Pops, was the target. He was sick with fear, but the fear was fractured. He was afraid for me, but he was also terrified for himself. What if he told me? What if I, in my love or denial, did not believe him? What if I confronted her? What if I said, Mundo told me the most insane story? He knew, with an instinct he could not ignore, what she would do. If she was capable of planning that for her own husband, what would she do to the young man who tried to stop her? He would be a loose end, a complication. He would vanish. But how could he say nothing? How could he go to the gym tomorrow, look me in the eye, and pretend he did not know? How could he watch me walk, unsuspecting, toward a fate she was so calmly arranging? The silence felt like a betrayal. It felt like complicity. The hours before dawn were a torment, a back-and-forth battle between the instinct for self-preservation and the loyalty he felt for me. He finally made his choice. He had to tell me. He just had to pray he was doing it the right way. He waited until the next morning. He knew my routine. He knew I would be in my car, alone, on the way to the gym, having just left the cold, silent house I now shared with her. My phone buzzed, and I glanced at the screen. It was Mundo. I felt a small, genuine smile touch my lips, a rare moment of warmth in a life that had become a frozen landscape. I was already exhausted, dreading the polite, empty performance of another day, and a call from Mundo felt blessedly normal. I answered, expecting a simple question about his training schedule. "Hey, Mundo," I said, "what is going on?" "Pops." His voice stopped me. It was wrong. It was thin, reedy, and vibrating with a terror so profound it sounded like static. "Pops, I need you to listen to me. Just listen, please." My brief smile vanished. I gripped the wheel. "What is it? You sound awful." You cannot tell anyone I said this. You cannot tell her. You have to swear to me, Pops, please." Her, Lulu. A flash of irritation, hot and quick, went through me. I did not have the emotional capacity for gym gossip, not today. "What is this about, Mundo? I am driving." "Pops, please," he begged, his voice cracking, and the raw, unadulterated panic in that sound finally sliced through my exhaustion. "I am not joking. You are in danger. A bad, bad danger. I slowed the car, my heart suddenly beating a hard, unfamiliar rhythm. What are you talking about? I was at the gym late. Last night. I heard her. In the office. She was with her daughter. Heard her what? Spit it out, Mundo. She wants you gone, Pops, he whispered, the words barely audible. Gone, I repeated, my voice sharp. What do you mean, gone? Like a divorce. I already know things are bad. We are. No, he shouted, and the sound was so unlike him it stunned me. No, Pops, not like that. Not gone. She wants you. She wants you gone. She was talking about people. People who do things. For money. In Mexico. She wants to. He choked on the word. Pops, she wants to have you killed. The words were absurd. They were melodrama. They were the plot of a bad movie. They simply did not compute. Mundo, that is a crazy thing to say, I said, but my voice was shaking. You cannot be serious. You misunderstood. I did not misunderstand, he insisted, and now he was crying, a desperate, gasping sound. I heard her. She was talking about you. About how to do it. She wants you gone, so she can have everything. I saw her face, Pops. I heard the tone. She is not human. She is serious. I swear on my life, she is serious. I stopped the car. I did not pull over. I just stopped, right in the middle of the road. I was listening, not to the words, but to the sound. I knew this young man. I knew his heart. He was not a liar. He was not a dramatist. The noise he was making was the sound of pure, soul-deep terror. He was not afraid for me. He was afraid of her. He was risking his own safety to make this call. And in that instant, everything clicked into place. The cooling, the isolation, her mother's voice, now she is your trouble. The arguments over money. Her coldness when I mentioned my family. The look of detachment I had always dismissed. It was not a divorce she was planning, it was an erasure, it was an acquisition. My blood did not run cold, it vanished. I felt a dizzying, hollow lightness. Mundo, I said, my own voice a strange, dry rasp. Where are you right now? I am somewhere safe. Pops, what are we going to do? Nothing, I said, the word tasting like poison. You are going to do nothing. You are going to go to the gym. You are going to act normal. You never made this call. We never had this conversation. Do you understand me? You cannot speak of this to anyone. Ever. Are we clear? Yes, Pops, be safe. The call ended. I sat in the silent car for a long, long time, my hands cemented to the wheel. The entire world looked exactly as it had 5 minutes before, but it was not the same. It was a hostile, alien place. And then, the final, suffocating realization settled over me. I had to keep moving. I had to go to the gym. I had to see her. I had to get through the entire day, and then I had to go home. I had to walk through that door, look into her eyes, and pretend. I had to share a meal, ask about her day, and act as if I did not know. I had to lie down in that bed, next to the woman who was polling prices on my life. I had to close my eyes and pretend to sleep, knowing the person breathing softly beside me was a monster. The warning had been delivered. The performance had begun. The hours I spent in that house after Mundo's call were the most difficult of my entire life. They were a masterclass in deception, a performance that drained every last ounce of my will. Every breath she took beside me in the darkness was a small explosion in the silence. I feigned sleep, my muscles rigid, my mind racing. I listened to her breathing, wondering if she was awake, wondering if she was lying there, planning. Was she thinking about money? Was she thinking about her contacts? Or was she, in some horrifying way, completely at peace? When morning came, I continued the charade. I rose. I spoke. I asked about her day. My own voice sounded alien to me, a thin, hollow recording played back in a room I no longer recognized. She was, as she had been for months, polite, efficient, and distant. She discussed the gym schedule. She mentioned an invoice. She had no idea that I knew. I was a dead man walking, and the secret of my own breathing, the knowledge of her heart, was the only power I possessed. I had to see Mundo. I had to see his face. I had to look him in the eye and confirm that the terror I heard in his voice was real and not some elaborate, youthful fantasy. I went to the gym, and the very air of the place felt toxic. I watched her. I watched her charm a new member. I watched her instruct a trainer. She was the picture of a professional, successful woman, and I knew she was a killer. I felt a dizzying sense of unreality. I found a moment, a brief window when she was occupied in a long meeting in her office, the one that used to be mine. I used an old phone, one not associated with my accounts, one I was sure she knew nothing about. My fingers were stiff as I dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. "Pops." His voice was a bare whisper. "We have to talk," I said, my own voice low and urgent. "Not here. Not on our phones. Not anywhere near our lives." I gave him a time and a place. A location so anonymous and public that it felt, paradoxically, safe. A place neither of us would ever normally be. I was there first. I waited, my entire body a single tightened nerve. I saw him approach, and my last, lingering hope that this was all a mistake evaporated. He was not just scared, he was haunted. He looked as if he had not slept in days. He was just a kid, pale and trembling, his eyes constantly scanning, flinching at every person who walked by. He looked like a hunted animal. He sat across from me. He could not get his hands to stay still. "You believe me," he whispered. It was not a question, it was a plea. I looked at him, and the truth of it settled on me, heavy as a shroud. "I believe you, son," I said, my voice thick. "I believe every word." A shudder of relief went through him, so profound it was like a collapse, but it was followed instantly by the terrible, crushing question. What do we do, Pops? What are we going to do?" I had been asking myself that question all night, running the options through my mind until they were worn smooth. "We cannot confront her," I said, thinking aloud. "We cannot go to her and say, 'We know.' You heard her, Mundo. You know what she is capable of. She would deny it. She would be calm. She would be convincing. And then, she would silence you. For good. And she would just find another way to finish the job with me. A better way." He nodded, swallowing hard, his eyes wide. "And I cannot just run," I continued. "She controls everything. All the accounts, all the money. She is woven into every part of my life. She has, as you said, people. She would find me. This is not about a divorce anymore. She will not just let me leave with half. She wants it all." We sat in a suffocating silence, two men trapped in an invisible cage. "Proof," I said finally, the word rough in my throat. "We have nothing. We have your story. It is your word against the word of a respected businesswoman, a loving mother, a devoted wife. Who do you think they will believe?" "But I heard her," he insisted, his voice desperate. "I know. And I know you. But they do not." I leaned forward, my mind made up. "We cannot do this alone. We are not equipped for this. This is not our world. We have to go to the authorities. We have to go to the police." Mundo flinched, his fear palpable. "The police. Pops, what if they do not believe us? What if they just send a uniform to the house to ask her a few questions? She will know, Pops. She will know it was me. She will." I cut him off, reaching across the table and grabbing his arm. I held it tight. "No. You are right. That is not what we are going to do. We are not going to them with just a story. We need to give them something they cannot ignore. Something real. We have to find a way to make her show her hand. We have to get evidence." In that moment, our pact was sealed. It was not a friendship, it was an alliance for survival. This young man, this boy I had watched grow up, was risking his life for me. His loyalty was the only solid ground left beneath my feet. "Mundo," I said, my voice quiet, "you understand what you are doing. You did not have to make that call. You could have walked away. You could have saved yourself." He looked at me, his fear still there, but now beneath it, a bedrock of resolve. "You are Pops," he said, as if that simple fact explained everything. I could not. I could not. "Okay," I said, taking a deep, ragged breath. "We are in this together. We will be smart. We will be so careful she never sees us. We are going to need help, real help. I will make the first call. I will set it up. Your job, the hardest job, is to be normal. You go to the gym. You train. You smile at her. You act like you know nothing. You perform, just like I do. Can you do that for me? He set his jaw. He was terrified. But he nodded. I can, Pops. I will. Good, I said. We are not going to run. We are not going to hide. We are going to let her build her own cage, piece by piece, and we are going to be standing right there when the door swings shut. We left at different times, 2 actors returning to the most dangerous stage of our lives. The performance was unsustainable. I knew it, and I could see the strain taking its toll on Mundo. He was young, and he was not built for this kind of suffocating deception. He looked thinner, his eyes permanently wide, and he flinched every time Lulu spoke to him. She would, on occasion, ask him why he was so quiet, her voice dripping with that false maternal concern she used so well. He would stammer an excuse about his training, and I would have to interject to draw her attention away. I was living on a knife's edge, balancing my own terror with the need to protect the one person who had saved me. We could not continue. We needed help. I did my research, quietly, in the dead of night, using a public library's computer, erasing my history, leaving no trace. I could not just walk into the local precinct and tell this story to the officer at the front desk. I needed someone serious, someone who understood the gravity of what I was alleging. I found a name in the Major Crimes Division, a lieutenant named Mike Atkins. His name was associated with complex cases. He was the one. Making the call was one of the hardest things I have ever done. I used an untraceable, prepaid phone. My voice was a dry croak. I did not give my name. I did not give hers. I simply said that I had credible, first-hand information about a solicitation for a serious crime, a threat to a man's life, and that I needed to speak with him directly and in absolute confidence. I must have sounded convincing, or perhaps just desperate enough, because he agreed. He gave me a time and a place, a neutral, anonymous government building. I picked Mundo up. He was vibrating with tension. I feel like I am going to be sick, Pops, he whispered as we walked toward the meeting. You just have to tell the truth, son, I told him, placing a hand on his shoulder. That is all we have. Just tell them exactly what you heard. Lieutenant Atkins was not what I expected. He was a quiet man, his eyes observant and intelligent. He did not look like a man who was easily shocked. He led us into a small, plain room and closed the door. There was no one else. He just sat, his hands resting on the table, and said, "Okay. Talk." So I did. I started at the beginning. I told him about meeting Lulu, the whirlwind romance, the warning from her mother. I told him about the gym, how she took control of the finances, how our fortunes rose as my own world shrank. I explained how she had systematically isolated me, how the passion had turned into a tool, and how I had come to the decision to seek a divorce. I laid out the foundation, painting a picture of a woman who had secured her citizenship, her money, and her control, and who now saw me as the final disposable obstacle. Atkins listened. His expression never changed. He just nodded occasionally, his gaze fixed on me. "It is a compelling story, Mr. Sosa," he said when I finished. "But I will be honest with you, it is one I have heard many times before. Bitter divorces, fights over money. It does not make your wife a killer." "I know," I said, my voice steady. "That is not why we are here. My story is just the context. He is the reason we are here." I nodded to Mundo. Atkins turned his calm, assessing gaze on him. "Okay, son. What did you see?" Mundo's voice trembled at first. He started, his words tumbling out, about being at the gym late. But as he spoke, he gained a strange kind of confidence. It was the confidence of the absolute, horrifying truth. He recounted the conversation he had overheard. He spoke the words Lulu had used, the phrases that were burned into his memory. People in Mexico, chops up people for money. He described her cold, thoughtful tone. He told Atkins about the final, chilling gesture, the hand drawn across her throat. And he told him how she had mentioned my name. When he finished, the room was silent. Mundo was pale, but he had not looked away from the lieutenant once. Atkins let the silence stretch. He looked from Mundo's terrified, earnest face back to mine. "A mother of 2, Atkins said, his voice flat. A successful businesswoman, pillar of the local fitness community. You own a business together. And you are asking me to believe she is shopping for a specialist to have you removed. Based on a conversation your young friend here thinks he overheard. He does not think he overheard it, I said, leaning forward, my own fear replaced by a cold anger. He heard it. I know him, and I know her. Look at him. Does he look like he is lying? We are not here to file a report because you are right. It is our word against hers, and she would tear him apart. We are here because we believe she is actively trying to find someone. We are here to ask you for help, to help us catch her. She does not know we are suspicious. She does not know he heard. She is going to try again. We need to be ready when she does. Atkins stared at me for a long, hard minute. He saw my certainty. He saw Mundo's raw, undeniable terror. He was no longer looking at a bitter husband. He was looking at a man who genuinely believed he was a target. All right, he said finally, and his entire demeanor shifted. The dispassionate listener was gone, replaced by the professional. I believe you are in danger. Your story, combined with his testimony. It is credible. But you are right. We have nothing that will stand up. We cannot act on this. Not yet. So what do we do? Mundo asked, his voice a whisper. We do not wait for her to find someone real, Atkins said, his eyes hardening. We give her someone to find. We are going to set a trap. We are going to see just how serious your wife is. The investigation, he explained, was now active. Lieutenant Atkins was a man of action. Now that he was convinced, he moved with a chilling efficiency. She is looking for a specialist, he said, his voice hard. So we will provide one. We have an officer. He is the best. He looks the part, he sounds the part, and he will be utterly convincing. The plan was simple, but its execution was the most terrifying thing I had ever contemplated. Mundo was the key. My blood ran cold at the thought of it. He was just a kid, and we were about to throw him into the deepest part of the ocean to see if the sharks would circle. Atkins was firm. She trusts him, or at least, she sees him as a kid from the gym. He is not a threat. He is the only one who can make the introduction. Mundo was brought in. He was pale, but his resolve had hardened. He knew there was no going back. What do I have to say? He asked. You overheard something more, Atkins instructed. You heard she was unhappy, that she had a problem she needed solved, a domestic problem. You tell her you know someone, not a friend, just a contact, someone who handles difficult situations. The next day at the gym was an agony. I had to watch, my heart in my throat, as Mundo approached her. I was pretending to organize equipment, my back to them, but my entire being was focused on that interaction. I saw him, his hands visibly shaking, walk up to her office. I saw him hesitate, then knock. She looked up, annoyed at the interruption. He spoke. I could not hear the words, but I saw her body language change. Her irritation vanished, replaced by a still, sharp, assessing focus. She was listening. She looked at him, her head tilted, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind. A kid from the gym, invisible, disposable, perfect. She nodded, a short, sharp gesture. Mundo walked away, his face slick with sweat. He did not look at me. He just went straight to the locker room. The meeting was set. She had taken the bait. I was in a surveillance van, a place so unlike my real life it felt like a dream. Lieutenant Atkins was beside me, his face impassive as he watched the monitors. I was just listening, my ears straining against the headset, the static crackle the only sound. The officer, our arranger, was wired. He was meeting her in a public but anonymous place. Then, her voice came through my headphones, clear and cold. You are the one Mundo spoke of. I am. The officer's voice was a low gravel, exactly the sound you would imagine. He said you had a problem, a domestic problem. Tell me what you want. I held my breath. This was the moment. Would she back down? Would she realize this was insane? I want him gone, Lulu said. There was no hesitation, no emotion. It was a business transaction. Gone is a word with many meanings, the officer pressed. You want him scared. You want him hospitalized. There was a pause. I heard her take a breath. I want him permanently gone. I want him to not wake up. I think I made a sound, a small, choked noise, because Atkins put a steadying hand on my arm. My stomach heaved. She had said it. She had confirmed it. "That is a serious job," the officer said. "That costs serious money." "I know," she said, and I heard the sound of her purse opening. "I do not have all the cash right now. When he is gone, I will have everything. The life insurance, the business, the accounts. I can pay you the rest then." "I need a down payment," the officer said, a sign of good faith. "I have one," she replied. I heard the clinking of metal. "This is all I have with me, but it is valuable." The officer asked her what it was. Her voice was flat, matter-of-fact. "Watches. Some bracelets. My wedding band? My own wedding band, my own jewelry." I tore the headset off, unable to listen to another second. She was paying for my own removal with the symbols of the life I had given her. Atkins just looked at me, his eyes dark. "We have her," he said. "We have her, but it is not enough," Atkins explained to me back in the sterile, quiet room. "I have seen cases like this. She is a beautiful woman, she is a mother. She will stand in front of a jury, and she will cry. She will say she was scared, that he was threatening her, that she did not know what else to do. She will say she was just talking. We need to make this case a slam dunk. We need to remove all doubt." "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice numb. "What more do you need?" "We need to show her the job is done," he said, his gaze unwavering. "We need to see her reaction. We need to record her paying for a completed job." I did not understand. "But how?" "We need to show her a picture," he said. "Of you, gone." The words just hung in the air. He was asking me to stage my own end. I was in a state of disbelief, but what choice did I have? This was the only way out. They took me to a desolate, overgrown place. I did not want to know where it was. A makeup artist was there, a woman with a kind, professional face who did not ask any questions. She worked quickly, her hands cool on my skin. She created a horrifyingly realistic wound on the side of my head, a deep crimson mark that looked sickeningly real. "We need you to lie down," Atkins said, his voice gentle for the first time. "Right here." It was not a ditch, it was not a grave. It was just a hollow in the cold ground. But as I lay down, I knew that was what it was. This was my grave. This was the spot she had paid for. They had me put my hands behind my back. They threw dirt on me, on my clothes, in my hair. I closed my eyes, I lay perfectly, terrifyingly still, and then I heard it. The sound I will never, ever forget. The sharp, mechanical click of the 35mm camera. Click, click, click. With every sound, a piece of me broke. I was attending my own funeral. I was walking on my own grave, feeling the cold earth against my back. I was seeing the image that my wife, the woman I had loved, the woman who had danced with me, was waiting to see. I was a dead man, and she had finally gotten her wish. I was a ghost. For the next day, I was in protective custody, a non-person waiting. Then, I was back in the van. I was hollowed out, numb. I did not know how I could feel any worse, but I was wrong. The officer was meeting her again. This time, he had the proof. We had the audio, and this time, a small, grainy video feed. I watched the monitor. I saw her approach. "It is done," the officer said simply. She was still, her face a mask. "How do I know?" "I need to be sure. I brought you this," he said, and he handed her the envelope. My heart stopped. I was watching my wife look at a photograph of my own dead body. I watched her face, waiting for the reaction. Was this it? Would she finally break? Would she show grief, remorse, shock? She was silent for a long, long time. And then, her lips twitched. A low sound came through the audio feed. It was a chuckle. It was a small, private laugh of relief. And then she smiled. She looked up from the picture, her entire face lit up with a brilliant, joyful smile. She raised her hands in the air, just for a second, a small gesture of pure, unadulterated triumph, as if she had just hit the lotto. "This is her big shot," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. She looked at the officer, her voice bright. "He won't wake up anymore." "No, ma'am," the officer replied. "He won't." "Good," she said, and she reached into her purse and handed him an envelope thick with the rest of the money. I turned away from the monitor. I had seen enough. I had seen the truth. I had seen the woman who had danced with me, the woman who had shared my bed, the woman I had tried to protect, laugh at my own grave. It was over. The final act. The police had everything. The audio of the solicitation. The video of the payment. The photograph. The money. The case was sealed. But Atkins wanted one last thing. He wanted to give her the chance to lie, to seal her own fate in front of uniformed officers. I was hidden away, safe. I saw this part only on video, later. 2 uniformed officers, their body cameras recording, walked into the gymnasium. It was a normal day. Lulu was in her office, her kingdom, commanding her world. "Ma'am," one of the officers said, his voice polite, "we are here to speak to you about your husband, Ramon Sosa." Lulu looked up, her face a perfect mask of mild confusion. "Ramon, is something wrong?" "We are investigating a missing person report, ma'am," the officer said. Lulu's performance was flawless. Her hand flew to her chest. Her eyes went wide with shock and believable fear. "Missing? What do you mean, missing? Oh my goodness, I saw him. When was it? Wednesday, I think?" "Yes, Wednesday was the last day. He has not contacted me." "Is he okay? What is going on?" She played the part of the distraught, worried wife perfectly. She, the woman who had, just the day before, paid for his removal, was now asking officers if he was okay. It was the final, definitive lie. Lieutenant Atkins had been waiting just outside. He entered the office. His face was not triumphant, it was just business. "Mrs. Sosa," he said, his voice cutting through her performance. "Stand up, please." Her expression flickered. The concerned wife vanished, replaced by a sudden cold confusion. "Why? What is this about?" "I was just telling them. You are under arrest," Atkins said simply. The confusion turned to pure disbelief. "Why? Really? Why am I under arrest?" The officer behind her produced the handcuffs. The sound they made, that small, metallic click, was the loudest sound in the room. As they were placed on her wrists, her entire demeanor changed. The mask did not just drop, it shattered. All the warmth, all the charm, all the victimhood she had cultivated for years, it all evaporated. What was left was what Mundo had heard in her voice, what I had seen in her reaction to the photograph. It was the coldest, hardest individual I had ever known. Her face was blank, void of all emotion except a flash of pure, calculating rage. Not for what she had done, but for having been caught. She was led out of her office, out of my gym, out of the life she had tried to steal. And as she was walked past the members, the staff, and the life she had built, she did not look like a grieving wife. She looked like a queen whose reign had abruptly and finally ended. There was no trial, there was no need. The evidence was absolute, a perfect, horrifying story told on audio and video. Her attorneys saw it. They knew. She was offered a plea deal, and she took it. 20 years. 20 years for planning to erase a life, my life. I was in the courthouse for the sentencing. I had to be. I had to see the end of it. The room was packed. The media was there. It was a spectacle. And I sat there looking at the back of her head. She never turned. She never looked at me. Not once. She sat there as if I were already the ghost she had paid to make. She was a stranger. She was an empty seat in the life I had once known. They gave me a chance to speak. I stood, and I felt the weight of all those eyes on me. I looked at her, at this person I had once loved so completely, and I did not feel rage. I did not feel hatred. I just felt a profound, bottomless sadness. And a sense of release. I told the court, and I told her, that I forgave her. I did not do it for her. She did not deserve it. I did it for me. I did it to let go of the pressure, the fear, the betrayal. I did it so I could walk out of that room and not be her victim any longer. And I walked away. I walked out into the air, a free man, a man who had literally walked on his own grave and come back. My life was not saved by my own wits. It was saved by the courage of one young man, Mundo, who had everything to lose and still chose to make that call. He saved my life. And that is a debt. And a bond. That I will carry with me for all of my days. Thank you for listening to this story. It is a strange one, and it is a hard one, but it is the truth. I hope you found something in it. Until next time, stay safe and be very, very careful who you choose to love.